You wouldn't want to ruin 20 pieces of painting just by varnishing. I learned it the hard way, so you don't have to. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about 5 varnish mistakes to avoid when you're varnishing your painting. So all these mistakes are based on my personal experience, which I learned it the hard way, so you don't have to. When I first started varnishing my painting, I didn't know the different types of the varnish that was available in the market. And let me tell you what, I've ruined 20 plus paintings just by varnishing. So the first mistake that I've done is rushing the drying process. I didn't know that applying varnish to a painting that hasn't completely dried can trap the solvents, which may cause discoloration and cracks over time. To apply the final varnish, for example gloss varnish or matte varnish, it is encouraged that you wait at least 6 to 12 months before applying the varnish. But if you're impatient like I do, you can also use retouching varnish as a temporary protecting layer for your painting. So it will protect your painting from moisture, dust, and fingerprints. Even for retouching varnish, you still have to wait for your painting to be at least touch dry. Better completely dry, but at least touch dry before you apply varnish onto it. Normally I will varnish my painting using retouching varnish after drying it for at least a week. The drying time of the painting really depends on the thickness of your paint. Obviously, thicker paint will take much longer to dry compared to a thin layer of painting. The second mistake is environmental control. Even the smallest particle can ruin the finish of your painting. Before you varnish your painting, make sure you brush off the dust from your painting or lint before varnishing. And just make sure that your room is well ventilated. An air purifier is a plus, but simply turn off the fan or air condition works fine for me, because the smell of the varnish is as bad as turpentine. Though I think I'm quite used to the smell of turpentine, so varnish smells really bad for me. And make sure you don't varnish your painting in your bedroom. Normally I would varnish my painting at the end of my painting session, so I would leave the studio right after my varnish session without making more movement that create dust in the area. The next mistake is not allowing varnish to fully dry and cure. If you don't give the varnish enough time to fully cure and dry, it can result in tacky and sticky surface. The mistake can happen due to impatience if you're like me, or not following the recommended drying time for the specific varnish type. Different type of varnish has different drying time, so the drying time varies from 24 hours or up to weeks to dry, depends on the type of the varnish that you're using. And factors like temperature, humidity of the surrounding, the thickness of application will also affect the drying time. After you apply varnish, it is important that you let the varnish to dry completely before moving or storing your painting, which leads to mistake number 4, improper handling of transporting. Transporting a painting when the varnish is not dry yet is really difficult, because you shouldn't have anything, literally anything, touching the surface of your varnish. You might risk getting more dust stuck onto your varnish surface. And at this stage, bubble wrap is not a very good idea. You might get the bubble wrap texture stuck onto the varnish surface when you take it off. Even though removing the varnish or applying another layer of varnish might do the trick. Mistake number 5 is not oiling out your painting before varnishing. I'm also quite new to varnishing, but I found this technique really helps me to even out the surface before varnishing. According to my research, oiling out reduces the absorbency of dull paint layers, unifies the painting appearance, and allows varnish to cover evenly. If you want to learn more about oiling out, I've linked the video over here of Florifart, hope I pronounced that correct, where he teaches you about the technique. So for paintings that I've left drying for a while, I would take a day or 2 before varnishing to oil out the painting before I actually apply varnish onto the surface. Oiling out is basically rubbing oil onto the paint surface so that it brings the oil color back. It's hard to explain. It's basically just making sure that all the surface will absorb the varnish evenly without them resisting the varnished, if that makes sense. check the video out, I would say. And here are some extra tips on varnishing your painting. First of all, always brush your varnish instead of like pouring the varnish directly onto the surface. Brushing your varnish is the best way to keep your varnishing layer thin. If you want to add more layers of varnish onto your painting, make sure that the first layer of varnish is really thin and let it dry completely before applying more layers. And the last tip is that you wouldn't want to apply really thick varnish onto your painting because over application will result in uneven, glossy, but unnatural appearance. So I hope you don't make the mistakes that I've made because you wouldn't want to ruin 20 pieces of painting just by varnishing. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section and I'll see you in the next video.